So when Larry Walters was 13 years old, his dad took him to an army surplus store. Now, an army surplus store is one of those stores that sells like army stuff, like fatigues and knives and, you know, weapons. Not real weapons usually, right? Like we have a bunch of army surplus stores here in Uherska Hradište, I think, right? They sell, like if you're interested in the military, the army, and you want to look like a soldier but not really be a soldier, that's where you go to, right? So Larry was 13, his dad took him to the store, and that's where Larry saw a weather balloon for the first time, right? And a weather balloon is a balloon that goes up in the air, and it goes way up there, and it carries equipment that measure stuff, right? Like temperatures and the winds and stuff like that. You could call it a I can't pronounce that word. It's a weather balloon, right? And these things are big. They're not like small. They're like this big, and they're filled with helium, right? They go up there, they come back. You know, you read the data, and you're like, okay, no. So Larry sees a weather balloon for the first time. He's 13. He's like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing ever. You know, these things go way up there. I want to be able to do that too. So he turns to his dad, and he's like, Dad, what do I have to do to go up there? And his dad's like, well, you can join the Air Force, you know, and fly fighter planes. Right, the Air Force. Part of the Army. And Larry's like, you mean now? He's like, no, dummy, you're 13. You can't join the Army at 13. You have to be 18. So Larry waits, right? And once he turns 18, he joins the Air Force. And he has his heart set on becoming a fighter pilot. He really wants to fly, you know, the fighter planes. And it turns out he can't, because you have to have a really good eyesight in order to fly planes, right? And his eyesight is poor, and he will never be allowed to fly a fighter plane. And he's devastated, he's crushed. So he gives up on his dream. He becomes a truck driver instead. He moves to Los Angeles. And he spends most of his time just hanging out in his backyard, you know, sitting in a lawn chair. He has a lawn chair, right? A chair you put on the lawn. And he just, you know, drinks beer. And he sits on the patio. The patio is the outdoor area where you sit, right? And he just sits there. And he looks at the sky. And he watches the planes fly overhead, thinking, damn, you know, I could have been in one of those. And then one day, he's out there, he's staring at a plane, and he remembers the weather balloons. And he's like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to prove everybody wrong. And if I can't fly a plane, I'm going to fly this fucking lawn chair, right? And so he sits down, he does the math, right? He calculates, he crunches the numbers. And the question is, how many weather balloons is he going to need in order to get the lawn chair with him in it off the ground? Well, turns out he's going to need 43 weather balloons filled with helium, which is not going to be cheap. I mean, helium isn't cheap, neither are weather balloons, right? And he decides to invest his life savings into this thing. I mean, his life savings aren't much at this point. It's like $4,000. But he just puts all of it in, like he pushes all the chips in on this thing, right? And he presents the idea to his girlfriend, and his girlfriend goes, what? And he says, honey, I have to. You might as well kill me. If you don't let me fly my lawn chair, you might as well kill me, because this is all I want to do, right? And she's like, all right, here's my money too. Okay, so she contributes too. So on July the 2nd, 1982, Larry sits in his lawn chair. And before he does, he gets 35 jerry cans, and these are like canisters, right? He gets 35 jerry cans, fills them with water, attaches them to the lawn chair. You need some weight, right? You have to weigh you down, because otherwise you would just shoot right up into the stratosphere or something. So he gets 35 jerry cans filled with water. He gets 43 weather balloons, and the plan is for him to go to about 100 feet, then to stop, enjoy the view, and then go back down. The lawn chair is attached to the ground with a rope, which is 100 feet long. right? That's the rope that's going to stop him once he reaches 100 feet, right? Because otherwise you just keep going up. He also brings with him a walkie-talkie, like a radio, to communicate with his ground crew. His ground crew is his girlfriend and a bunch of his drinking buddies. He also brings with him a BB gun, which is like an air gun. It's a gun that can't really kill anyone, but you need to be able to shoot the balloons, because how else are you going to get back down, right? You have to shoot the balloons. So he has a BB gun with him, and he has a parachute, just in case. You know, I mean, he's pretty confident, but he's like, well, if the shit hits the fan, I need a parachute. And just to be on the safe side, he tells his ground crew to call the local airports when he takes off. Because, you know, there's a lot of airports in the area. And he's like, if those pilots see me up there in my lawn chair, they're going to think they're hallucinating. So please call the local airports and tell them I'm going to be up there, right? And not to freak out. And they're like, sure. So, okay, one thing did go according to plan. The lawn chair did float up to 100 feet. But then the rope broke, like immediately. Like the second he reached 100 feet, the rope that connected him to the ground broke, and the lawn chair just shot right up. And it traveled pretty fast. It traveled at like 1,000 feet per minute, which is like 20 kilometers per hour, and he couldn't stop it. And it rose so fast that Larry's glasses slipped off and fell down. Luckily, he brought a spare pair, so it was like no big deal. Just, you know, put on a spare pair. And his ground crew was freaking out. They were watching him. He was getting smaller by the second in the sky, and they were like, he's gone. I mean, he's a goner. We'll never see him again. We'll just stand here and wait for his dead body to fall out of the sky, right? Because how else is he going to get back down? I mean, Larry was fine. Larry was a glass half full kind of person, right? You know that glass half full? Like when you see a glass and it's half full, some people say it's half full, and some people say it's half empty, right? Larry was like, yeah, it's half full, it's great, everything's great, you know? And so he didn't panic. He wasn't really bothered. He was like, I'm gonna figure something out. Vzpomínám si, že jsem mluvil o něčem. Vzpomínám si, že jsem mluvil. I remember talking. A tady to my ani nemusí být přidám I. Ale kdyby tam bylo vzpomínám si, že jsi ty mluvil, tak tam by to bylo I remember you talking about. Ale tam stačí inktvar, jo? Vzpomínám si, že se něco dělo. Měl moc špatnou angličtinu, než aby se domluvil. Tam je několik zajímavých věcí na téhle větě. Za prvé, měl moc špatnou angličtinu, nebude he had, ale his English was. Jo, to zní mnohem líp. Takže his English was. Ještě něco. Ne. Tam musí být v téhle větě to. Tam musí být. My to slovíčko příliš moc nepoužíváme, tam musí být to. Jak je tam byla moc špatná, než aby. Jak je tam to moc, než aby, tam musí být to. A nebo enough, když to přehodíte. Takže his English was too bad for him to make himself understood. To je na jinou hodinu ten zbytek věty, to si necháme na jindy. Ale his English was too bad for him to něco. A nebo his English wasn't good enough for him to. Jo, jedno z těchto dvou, ale musí tam být jedno z těch dvou. Pokud mě nenecháš letět na tom křesle, tak to mě zrovna zabíjí. To zrovna. To už zrovna. Taková věta, která se hodí na večírky, když dojde chlast, jakože, tak to zrovna může mít dom. Tady tohle zrovna. Might as well. Ne, žádné bells. We might as well go home. Jo, tak to už zrovna pojďme dom. Jo, stejně tak dobře. Výborné spojení. Jako ne úplně z těch top 10, ale hodí se to. Takže you might as well shoot me. Je jako to už mě zrovna zastřel. O ničem jiném nikdo nemluví. Ještě jednou? Tak, takže začátek bude that's all. Aha, anebo anyone talks about. That's all anyone talks about. Jo, to je všecko jinak, to je postavené jinak. Když máte v angličtině that's all, nám to připadá přirozené, ale ono je to vlastně české nic víc. A my když překládáme nic víc, tak často zkoušíme nějaké nothing more nebo něco. Ne, to se dává naopak, jako that's all. Takže that's all anyone talks about je nikdo jiný o ničem O ničem jiném nikdo nemluví. To mě nikdy nenapadlo. Tam je to prapodivné sloveso. Ono to napadnout se překládá někdy figure, někdy think, occur, to je ono. Takže to mě nikdy nenapadlo. Tak, it never occurred to me. To je ono. That never occurred to me. Je tam asi 7 c a 12 dr v tom slově. Hrozný spelling. A hlavně ta výslovnost, většina cizinců říká occurred. Ne, to nemá s cured nic společného. Tohle je occurred. A poslední, všecko, co se mohlo pokazit, se pokazilo. To se do života hodí. Everything that could have gone wrong. Stačí 3 písmena už jenom. Did. I bez toho it. Klidně. Takže everything that could have gone wrong did. Good. So this is the vocabulary. Some of it is good. No, it's good. It's not. It's good. Yeah, it is good. All right. So when you say that's a bummer, what you're saying is it is a big pity. It means the same thing. Okay, there are better ways of saying that. Like when somebody tells you, remember that job I applied for? I didn't get it. So what do you say? You know, that's a shame. That's too bad. Or that's a bummer. Right? Don't say it is a big pity. That is horrible. Tohle je z těch 3 možností ta nejméně častá, hrozně hovorová. Jako that's a shame nebo that's too bad jsou mnohem lepší. A patio sounds like an Irish name, right? So who did you go with? Patio. No, it's not an Irish name. A patio is an outdoor area where you eat or sit or rest. Restaurants have patios often. A jerry can, I explained that one, right? That's a canister of water. I don't know why it's called a jerry can. I think Germans were called jerrys in the Second World War. Might be. That's where it started. Untie is the opposite of tie, right? You have to untie your shoelaces to take off your shoes. A BB gun is a non-threatening, okay, it's an air gun. When you say that somebody's laid back, what does that mean? What's the opposite of laid back?
Hard.
Yeah, or intense. Yeah, a laid back person just doesn't worry about things. You know, a laid back person is chill and they don't, freak out. When something slips your mind, you're supposed to remember it, but you don't, right? So you have a doctor's appointment and it slips your mind and you don't show up. The doctor's pissed and they call you and they're like, sorry, it slipped my mind. Numb. When something's numb, it has no feelings it has no feeling. There's no sense in it. So when you say my legs are getting numb, that's probably not a good sign, under any circumstances. But maybe when you're in a cold environment, your fingers start getting numb. Fry, that's a cooking word, right? Fried cheese, the national dish. Okay, authorities are like institutions, like people in charge of whatever, I don't know, things. I've tried to explain this one like 3 times already, and I'm always like halfway through, I'm like, I don't know. I translate. Úřady, obviously. A hiking trail it's a path, right, in the woods, usually, that you hike on. When you're blindsided, something happened that you totally didn't expect, or you didn't see it coming, right? So we were blindsided. It's like it came out of left field. It came out of nowhere. We totally didn't see it coming. Follow through. This is a good one. Everybody should be able to follow through on things. Well, what this means is when you start something, you don't quit halfway through. Right? You follow through. You keep at it until it's done. So this is a quality that people put on their resumes. When you write a resume, you want to make it clear that you're not a quitter. You say, I have follow through, or I follow through on things. I don't stop until, things get done. And the last one is call it a day, and it basically means stop for now. So let's call it a day. Okay, we've been here for 7 hours. Let's call it a day and maybe meet again tomorrow. Česky, pro jistotu. That's a bummer. To je škoda, to je blbé, to je škoda. Aha. Patio. Zahrádka, posezení, venkovní posezení v podstatě. Jerrycan, kanister, anti, rozvázat, BB gun, vzduchovka. Těch překladů pro vzduchovku je asi 30, ale tohle je jeden z nich, ten se dobře pamatuje. Laid back, pohodář, přesně tak. Ale je to jako přídavné jméno, takže he's very laid back, nebo he's a laid back person. Slip one's mind. Vypadlo mi to z hlavy, je úplně přesně ono. Úplně mi to vypadlo z hlavy. Numb je zvláštní slovíčko na překlad teda, protože ono to asi se dá překládat jako něco jako otupělý nebo tak, ale v podstatě, když řeknete my legs are getting numb, tak je to česky přestávám cítit. To je ono, přestávám cítit něco. Takže it's getting numb. Fry, smažit. Authorities jsou teda úřady, hiking trail, nějaká stezka, jak se to říká, turistická stezka, trasa. Jo. Blindsided? No ano, zase těch překladů je hrozně moc. Vůbec jsme to nečekali, všecky nás to zaskočilo. Nebyli jsme na to připraveni. Yo, we were blindsided, we didn't see it coming. Follow through. Dotáhnout do konce je úplně přesně ono. Dotáhnout do konce. Jo. A call it a day je takový hezký idiom, jako už to ukončíme. Jo, let's call it a day. Nemá to jako s dnem nic společného. All right. Oh, I should ask you questions. I don't want to ask you questions because you know everything. But I should. All right. So what am I bringing with me on this trip to the heavens? What? No, I'm bringing a walkie-talkie, for one thing, right? So I can communicate with my quote-unquote ground crew. I'm also bringing a BB gun to shoot the balloons once I get high up enough. I'm also bringing a jerrycan, yeah, 35 jerrycans full of water to weigh me down, right? And also a parachute. Why? Just in case. You know, if the shit hits the fan, I'm going to need a parachute. Am I not confident in this plan? I am, but no. Things can go wrong, so a parachute won't hurt. All right. So what's my ground crew going to do while I'm up there? There's one thing I want them to do, actually. Call the authorities and the local airports so that the pilots don't think that they're hallucinating, right, or seeing things. Because you're not used to, when you're an airline, you know, a commercial airline pilot, you're flying the plane, suddenly you see a person next to you in a lawn chair, like what the fuck? So you should be notified if something like that is going to happen. Okay, so how is the plan going to go? Are things going to go according to plan? Well, for about 10 seconds they will. So I will get to 100 feet, and that's where I'm supposed to stop. And what's supposed to stop me? A rope. There's a rope. I'm connected. I'm attached to the ground with a rope. So what's going to happen with the rope? It's going to break. It's going to break pretty immediately, and I'm going to shoot up. Right? Like pretty fast. I'm going to be traveling at 20 kilometers per hour. Will I be surprised by the speed at which I'll be traveling? I will. I totally will. Like my glasses will slip off my face and fall down. Will I panic? No. Who will? My ground crew. They'll be like, he's gone. I'll be fine. I'll figure something out. What's that piece of paper on the mantelpiece above the fireplace? I have a fireplace in my house, right? And there's a mantelpiece above the fireplace. There's a piece of paper on it that's framed. It's probably something really important. What does it say? It says, "Thank you for all the food you have Yeah, given away or donated over the years. There's a signature on it too. What's the signature? Mother Teresa. It's from actual Mother Teresa. Who did she send it to? This guy. She sent it to me. Am I involved in a lot of charity work? Yeah, I am. That's the kind of person that I am. Now, if you were to describe me with one adjective, what would that be? Generous. I'm very generous. Sometimes I'm too generous for my own good. I've been burned before. People have taken advantage of me. Yeah, I've been used before. I don't care. I'm like all in, you know. And my family sees this, and they try to, you know, talk me out of doing a lot of stuff that I do. But, you know, I just can't. I can't help myself. So, was I born with a silver spoon in my mouth? No. Absolutely not. My family was pretty poor to the point where I couldn't even afford. They couldn't afford to put me through college, right? I couldn't go to college. I wanted to, but well, I didn't really want to. Was I a good student in high school? No. Was there not particularly? Was there a subject I was good at? Gym. I was really good at gym. I got an A in gym. That was the only subject I got an A in. Do I read a lot? No. I read the note from Mother Teresa a lot, but apart from that, no. I'm not much of a reader, really. So, what if I didn't go to college? What did I do instead? Yeah, I got a job just stocking produce, which is like fresh vegetables and fruits in a local market, food market, right? And I was 18, and I got this job, and I turned out to be a hard worker, and I turned out to be really good, and I had a knack for numbers, and the owners noticed that, and they immediately promoted me to manager. So at the age of 20, I already ran a store, basically. I was manager of the store. Do I own the store now? That's a trick question. No. I don't. I did not anymore. I did own it for a very short time, like a day maybe. I immediately signed it over. I signed it over to my kids. Was everyone happy about this? My lawyers weren't. My accountant wasn't. He sat me down. He was like, "Come on, man, you can't do that because this is the first time you actually own something. You don't have to work now." And I said, "I want to work." I said, "I started this thing poor, and that's how I'll go out or die. I don't care. I don't need money. You know, I like work. Work's good." Is it an obsession for me? Am I obsessed? No, I'm not. And a lot of people, I have friends who manage their own stores. They run their own businesses. They're obsessed with work. They spend all their time at work. Not me. You know, my sweet spot is my family, my home. You know, I love spending time with my kids. But I love my employees too. Don't get me wrong. I love those guys. In fact, when one of them had a brain condition, he had to go to a lot of appointments, and I was the one who drove him there, like every time. Like his family was like, "You're gonna be fine." I said, "No, you know, I'll take you there." So with my employees, I always have their back. I have their backs, you know, yeah. So that's it. Okay. Má zvláštní talent nasírat lidi, to ty nemáš. He has a knack for pissing people off. Aha, super. Co pak jsme na to neměli peníze? Otázka, co pak jsme na to neměli peníze? Couldn't we afford it? Hey, couldn't we afford it? Když přišli na svět děti, ještě se to zkomplikovalo. Things, výborně. Things got even more complicated, even harder. Nám nevadilo, že jsme měli zakázáno jíst. We didn't mind. Že jsme měli zakázáno? We didn't mind not being allowed to eat. We didn't mind not being allowed to eat. Ideálně strávený čas je pro něho to, když his idea of. A to je hrozně, ono je to trošku jinak prostě v angličtině a v češtině. Je to úplně logické, ale his idea of a good time is a tak dále. Museli bychom se do toho zapojit? Otázka, museli bychom se do toho zapojit? Would we have to? Jo, to je to museli bychom. Would we have to? Zapojit se? Get involved. So would we have to get involved? Na mě se nicméně mohli vždycky spolehnout. I had their back. I always had their back. Že prý má nějaký problém se srdcem. Že prý. To tam není v tom článku. They say už je takové moc jako všeobecně to ví celý svět. Apparently. Je výborné. Apparently je možná nejlepší tady. A nebo I hear, by tam šlo v přítomném čase. Jedno z těch dvou. To já jsem tě tam vozil. Dvě možnosti. I was the one who, nebo it was me who. Obojí tam jde. It was me who drove you. I was the one who drove you. Nedovol, aby to rozmluvil. Don't let him. Don't let him talk her out of it. Don't let him talk her out of it. So Larry keeps going up, right? The rope has broken and Larry keeps going up. He actually made it all the way to 16,000 feet, which is 5 kilometers. That's pretty high up. Like he's 5 kilometers up in the air in his lawn chair. To put that in perspective, like single engine planes, like small planes, they go up to about 4 kilometers, right? So if there was like a Cessna nearby, Larry was above it in his lawn chair. So about 45 minutes into his flight, the lawn chair stopped. It slowed down, then it stopped. And Larry radioed his ground crew to say that he was fine and not to worry about him. And then he realized that it's kind of windy up there. And he was about to fly over one of the largest airports in the world, LAX, the Los Angeles International Airport. And he figured that could be a bit of a problem. So he radioed back to his ground crew and he was like, have you guys notified the airport? And they were like, uh-oh. It slipped their mind. They forgot, things were hectic with the jerry cans of water and stuff. They didn't notify the airport. And it turns out that at that point, 2 commercial airline pilots had already reported seeing a person in what looked like a lawn chair floating near their plane. And the flight control personnel was like, fuck off. Like, that's not possible. So they laughed them off. They assumed that they were joking. So as you can probably imagine, it gets pretty cold up there. And once Larry's arms and legs started getting numb, he was like, yeah, I'll call it a day probably. So he grabbed the BB gun and he started shooting the balloons. Because that was the plan all along, right? That was the right thing to do. But imagine being 5 kilometers up in the air and manipulating a BB gun and shooting upwards, right? So he shot a bunch of balloons and then he dropped the gun. And that's when you're screwed, right? Like, where are you going to get a gun in a place like that? Well, Larry was incredibly lucky because he had shot the exact right number of balloons for the launch chair to start slowly going down. He was like, that was incredible. If he hadn't, he would have been screwed, probably. So now there was just one more problem. Power lines, right? The high voltage power lines. If you end up on one of those, this is what happens to you, right? You get fried. And so as Larry was getting closer to the ground, he was like, God, please don't let me land on a power line. And he got lucky. He steered the lawn chair away from the power lines, except the rope that was hanging from the lawn chair, the rope that broke, wrapped around a power line. And since there was still a lot of water attached to the lawn chair, it dragged the power line down and caused a 20-minute blackout in Long Beach, California. And so Larry is in his lawn chair. He's dangling like 3 feet above ground. And he's like, well, the police are going to be here pretty soon, probably, so I don't want to deal with the police. So he jumps off the chair, he starts walking away. He gets stopped by the police within seconds, and he gets arrested. He's taken into custody. And they ask him, why did you do that? I mean, you're crazy. And he said, a man can't just sit around. That's an amazing explanation, right? So he suffered a few minor injuries, but nothing major. The authorities didn't know what to do with him. Like, they wanted to charge him with a crime, but what's the crime exactly, right? Like, no one had done that. And so they were like, pay $1,500 and you're off the hook. And he was like, okay. So he paid $1,500 and that was it. He became a celebrity. He started to be called Lawn Chair Larry, obviously. He was invited to talk shows, and the lawn chair ended up in a museum. And he was famous for a while. And his friends were like, Larry, enjoy this. This is your 15 minutes of fame. This is great. And he was like, yeah, I guess. Larry struggled mentally. I mean, this was the one thing he wanted to do, and now he's done it. Like, what's left for me to do, right? Larry was not what you would call an open book. Like, he didn't talk about his feelings or his struggles to anybody. So when, at the age of 44, he got into his car, drove to his favorite hiking trail, and put a bullet in his heart, everyone was blindsided. They're like, Larry, he was such a, happy-go-lucky guy, and because no one saw inside him. So yeah, one thing Larry did talk about was people's dreams, and he would often say, a lot of people have dreams, but they never follow through on them, right? Well, to Larry's credit, he certainly did follow through on his dream, right? So rest in peace, Larry Walters.